Before we begin, imagine standing in front of billion-dollar mega projects that were fully engineered, heavily funded, and nearly complete, yet somehow abandoned as if the world itself rejected them. Across continents and centuries, these ghost infrastructure projects were derailed by curses, human error, cultural clashes, economic collapse, and forces of nature no blueprint could predict. Some were swallowed by jungles, some sealed in concrete, and others left standing with no purpose at all. Stay with me, because as we count these down, you will realize that sometimes the most terrifying ruins are the ones humanity built for itself. At number 1, we begin with one of the most infamous ghost infrastructure projects in the South Pacific, the abandoned Vaimanga Resort on the island of Rarotonga, a development that was meant to transform the Cook Islands economy forever. In the late 1980s, the Cook Islands government entered a $120 million partnership with Italian investors to build a 5-star Sheraton resort that was positioned as the future crown jewel of Pacific tourism. By 1990, the massive luxury complex was already 80% complete, with guest rooms fully outfitted and the infrastructure of a tropical paradise firmly in place. However, beneath the polished vision of economic prosperity lay land scarred by a violent colonial past. In 1911, European settler William Wigmore killed a local leader named More Uriatua, an act that led the victim's daughter, Metua, to curse the land and declare that no business would succeed there until it was returned to its rightful owners. That warning resurfaced dramatically in 1990, when More Rua, the grandson of the woman who cast the original curse, arrived uninvited at the construction site wearing traditional warrior dress. In front of government officials and developers, he drove a sacred spear into the foundation stone, shattering it into countless fragments and publicly renewing the curse. Within months, the Italian financiers were arrested for mafia-linked money laundering, funding collapsed overnight, and the Cook Islands were left burdened with a debt so massive it nearly destroyed the national economy. The financial disaster triggered widespread depopulation, as many citizens fled to New Zealand to escape economic collapse. Today, the once luxurious Sheraton complex stands hollow and reclaimed by jungle vines, while locals say wandering spirits still guard land that refuse to be sold. Even decades later, Chinese and Japanese investors have repeatedly attempted to revive the site, only to withdraw at the last moment due to what they describe as unforeseen complications, reinforcing Vaimanga's reputation as one of the most cursed ghost infrastructure projects ever built. Coming in at number 2 is the Hoosac Tunnel, a 5-mile-long engineering nightmare carved through the Berkshire Mountains of Massachusetts and widely regarded as one of the deadliest infrastructure projects in American history. Construction began in 1851 with the goal of creating a direct rail connection between Boston and the western United States, but from the very beginning, the mountain resisted every attempt to conquer it. Geologists promised solid bedrock, yet workers instead encountered unstable porridge stone, a waterlogged substance that behaved like underground quicksand, swallowing equipment and man alike. In 1852, engineers introduced a 75-ton stone-cutting machine costing $25,000, designed to slice through rock with mechanical precision. After advancing just 12 feet, the machine's gears snapped, its steel teeth shattered, and it seized permanently inside the mountain, an event workers interpreted as a warning. Over the next 2 decades, the Hoosac Tunnel earned the grim nickname the Bloody Pit, as nearly 200 workers were killed by collapsing shafts, experimental nitroglycerin explosions, and a catastrophic naphtha lamp blast that sent molten iron raining down the central shaft. The tunnel finally opened in 1875, but stories of hauntings followed immediately, including the legend of Ringo Kelly, a blaster who murdered 2 co-workers and was later found strangled to death on the exact anniversary and location of their deaths. The immense human cost bankrupted private investors, forcing the state of Massachusetts to take over the project, a pattern common among ghost infrastructure, where public authorities inherit financially and spiritually toxic developments. Even today, the abandoned false start borehole remains hidden in the woods of Florida, Massachusetts, a rusting reminder that some infrastructure projects demand a blood toll no budget can repay. Landing at number 3 is the Loboc Stupid Bridge in Bohol, Philippines, one of the most visually striking and culturally revealing ghost infrastructure failures in the world. Built during the 1970s at a cost of approximately 150 million pesos, the modern concrete bridge was designed to span the Loboc River and serve as a major transportation artery for the region. From an engineering perspective, the project was sound, with high-quality materials, skilled labor, and efficient construction methods. However, planners made a fatal oversight by ignoring the spiritual and historical importance of the 400-year-old San Pedro Apostol Parish Church, a national treasure that has stood since 1602. As construction advanced, the bridge rose confidently over the river, only to stop abruptly just meters from the church's ancient bell tower, as if halted by an invisible force. Government plans called for the demolition of the church, but local parishioners believed the project was a front for corrupt officials seeking legendary treasures rumored to be buried beneath the altar. In response, the community formed a human shield of prayer and protest, refusing to allow construction to continue. The resistance succeeded, and the bridge was abandoned at 90% completion, leaving behind a multi-million peso structure that leads directly into a sacred wall. Locals mockingly named it the Stupid Bridge, and it now functions only as a tourist promenade and observation deck. The Loboc Bridge remains a permanent scar on the landscape, demonstrating how top-down planning fails when it ignores sacred geometry, cultural memory, and community faith, and proving that in the battle between government concrete and a people's cathedral, the cathedral almost always wins. At number 4, we descend beneath the streets of Cincinnati, Ohio into one of the most complete yet utterly unused ghost infrastructure projects in the United States, the Cincinnati Subway, often described as an underground time capsule. In 1920, city leaders launched an ambitious plan to transform the polluted Miami and Erie Canal into a modern rapid transit system that would propel the Queen City into a new era of urban mobility. By 1923, more than 2 miles of tunnels were nearly 90% complete, featuring 4 fully built underground stations with tiled walls, concrete platforms, and staircases rising toward street level. Yet by 1927, construction stopped entirely, leaving behind a $6 million investment that never carried a single passenger. Post-World War I inflation doubled construction costs, but the most devastating blow came from a fatal engineering oversight discovered after the tunnels were completed. The city's existing streetcars, which the subway was designed to accommodate, were too long to navigate the sharp curves and narrow turn radiuses of the underground system. This multi-million-dollar incompatibility effectively doomed the project, a failure that felt almost cursed in its precision. When the Great Depression followed soon after, any remaining hope vanished, and Cincinnati refused to spend the additional $10 million required to finish a system that was already nearly complete. Today, the sealed tunnels beneath Central Parkway are still maintained by the city, quietly housing water mains instead of commuters. The Cincinnati subway stands as a haunting example of technological lock-in and reversed sunk cost fallacy, where fear of past failure froze progress and preserved a forgotten future beneath the city's feet. Kicking things off at number 5 is Canada's most infamous haunted infrastructure site, the Marathon Tunnel in Thorold, Ontario, better known as the Blue Ghost Tunnel, a place where engineering ambition collided with submerged history. Completed in 1876 as part of the Grand Trunk Railway, the limestone tunnel was built to carry trains beneath the Third Welland Canal and served as a vital transportation artery. However, construction began under a dark omen when the canal's route required the flooding of an old pioneer cemetery. Although officials promised to relocate the graves respectfully, hundreds of bodies were left behind, their headstones removed as the rising canal waters submerged the dead. In 1903, tragedy struck again when 2 steam locomotives collided head-on inside the tunnel, misled by faulty information and obscured by thick mist. The crash killed both firemen in horrific fashion, one crushed within the machinery and the other scalded to death by an exploding boiler, whose screams echoed through the stone passage for hours. By 1915, the railway officially abandoned the tunnel, citing structural instability, but locals believed the site was cursed by the disturbed dead. Since then, explorers have reported sightings of a blue mist drifting through the tunnel, known as the Blue Ghost, believed to mark the boundary where modern infrastructure drowned the past. The tunnel remains sealed, serving as a psychological repository of collective guilt and unresolved trauma, buried physically below the modern world it was meant to serve. Coming in at number 6 is the Churchill Tunnel in Richmond, Virginia, a 4,000-foot railway passage that became one of the most chilling ghost infrastructure projects in American history. Completed in 1873, the tunnel was plagued by flooding and collapses from its earliest days, killing at least 10 workers during construction. Its final descent into legend occurred on October 2, 1925, during a routine renovation that ended in catastrophe. As work train number 231 entered the tunnel, the unstable clay above gave way, collapsing the mountain and burying the locomotive and its crew beneath hundreds of tons of red Virginia earth. In the chaotic aftermath, survivors reported seeing a terrifying figure with fangs and decomposing flesh emerge from the tunnel and flee toward Hollywood Cemetery, where it vanished into the mausoleum of a man named William Warden Poole. This sighting became the foundation of the Richmond vampire legend, an omen so shocking that it overshadowed the true scale of the disaster. Faced with extreme danger and astronomical recovery costs, the railway company made a final decision to abandon the tunnel entirely, sealing the entrance with bricks and leaving the train, 10 flat cars, and multiple crew members entombed forever. Officially, 4 bodies were identified, but several others remain unaccounted for, locked inside the collapsed passage. Today, those who walk near the sealed tunnel claim they can still hear the tapping of a telegraph key from deep underground, a ghost signal echoing from a crew frozen in time. The Churchill Tunnel endures as a literal and symbolic tomb, where mythology conveniently replaced accountability and fear preserved a forgotten fragment of 1920s rail history. At number 7, we enter the shadowed mountains of Kyoto, Japan, where the Kiyotaki Tunnel stands as one of the most ominous ghost infrastructure projects ever constructed. Built between 1927 and 1928 as part of the Ata-Goyama Railway, this narrow single-lane tunnel connects the northern Arashiyama district to the town of Saga Kiyotaki, yet its true legacy lies not in transportation, but in death. The tunnel was constructed using forced labor, including disenfranchised workers and Korean laborers who were made to work in brutal conditions without pay. Many died from exhaustion, accidents, or mistreatment, and local accounts claim their bodies were buried directly into the tunnel's foundations. The tunnel is haunted by the symbolism of the number 4, pronounced shi in Japanese, which also means death. Although its official length is approximately 500 meters, legend insists its spiritual length is exactly 444 meters, a triple death omen that terrifies locals. Drivers report seeing a woman dressed in white sprinting toward their vehicles in rearview mirrors, while others refuse to enter when the traffic signal turns green, believing the spirits manipulate the lights to lure victims into fatal collisions. At night, the tunnel's interior lighting inexplicably shifts to an eerie red glow, and travelers hear screams echoing from the surrounding bamboo forest, a known site of numerous suicides. Poor ventilation causes dizziness and nausea, but these physical reactions only reinforce beliefs that the dead are still present. The Kiyotaki Tunnel does not simply cut through a mountain. It occupies a space where human suffering, cultural symbolism, and biological discomfort fuse into one of Japan's most enduring haunted passages. Coming in at number 8 is the Inunaki Tunnel in Fukuoka Prefecture, widely regarded as the most feared ghost infrastructure site in modern Japan. Completed in 1949 and abandoned in 1975 after a safer bypass was constructed, the old tunnel was later sealed permanently with massive concrete blocks. This extreme action followed a horrifying crime in December 1988 when 5 youths abducted a 20-year-old factory worker, tortured him, and burned him alive inside the tunnel after he refused to surrender his car. The site is infamous for a chilling sign once reported near the entrance, stating that the Japanese Constitution does not apply beyond that point. This warning marks the threshold of the Inunaki legend, where law and civilization are believed to dissolve. Folklore claims that beyond the sealed tunnel lies Inunaki Village, also known as the Howling Village, a cannibalistic cult community erased when the Inunaki Dam submerged the area. Although the village no longer physically exists, its memory survives as a dark myth said to haunt the tunnel. Visitors describe hearing disembodied canine howls and smelling burning gasoline, as if the murder of 1988 is replaying endlessly. The government sealed the tunnel not only to keep people out, but to contain a place where fear, violence, and isolation converged. Inunaki stands as a surrogate grave for a lost community, where abandoned infrastructure absorbs unresolved trauma and transforms it into legend. At number 9, we find a ghost project that defies superstition and instead reveals the raw power of nature itself, the Choluteca Bridge in Honduras. In 1996, the Honduran government commissioned the Japanese Hazama Ando Corporation to construct a bridge capable of surviving the region's most violent hurricanes. Stretching 484 meters across the Choluteca River, the Bridge of the Rising Sun was completed in 1998, just as Hurricane Mitch, the deadliest storm to strike Central America in 200 years, approached. The hurricane obliterated nearly every bridge in the country, yet the Choluteca Bridge emerged completely unscathed, a $300 million triumph of modern engineering. However, when the floodwaters receded, engineers realized the bridge faced a bizarre and devastating fate. The hurricane had been so powerful that it physically rerouted the Choluteca River, carving a new channel hundreds of meters away. The bridge stood intact, but the river was gone. For 5 years, it spanned only dry, scorched earth, earning global infamy as a bridge to nowhere. Roads had to be rebuilt, and the river eventually redirected again, but the damage to the system had already been done. The Choluteca Bridge became a living metaphor for rigid thinking, proving that infrastructure built to last must also be built to adapt. Nature did not destroy the bridge, it simply moved on without it. Closing out at number 10 is the most tragic ghost railway ever built, the Madeira Mamori Railroad of the Brazilian Amazon, forever known as the Devil's Railroad. Constructed between 1907 and 1912 during the height of the rubber boom, the railway was designed to connect Porto Velho to Bolivia and bypass treacherous river rapids. The jungle fought back relentlessly, and thousands of workers from around the world died from malaria, yellow fever, snake bites, starvation, and brutal conditions. Estimates place the death toll between 6,000 and 30,000 men, leading to the belief that every wooden sleeper rests atop a grave. After 5 years of unimaginable human cost, the railway was completed at a cost of approximately $33 million in 1912 value. Yet, in the cruelest twist of fate, the global rubber market collapsed the very year the railroad opened, as Asian plantations flooded the market and rendered Amazonian rubber unprofitable. The fully completed railway became economically useless almost overnight. The Devil's Railroad was abandoned, leaving rusting steam engines to be swallowed by vines and silence. Today, the site is recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage location, preserved not as a triumph, but as a warning. The Madeira Mamori Railway stands as a monument to the commodity trap, where a project can succeed in construction, yet fail completely in purpose, leaving behind only ghosts, steel, and the memory of a war against nature that humanity technically won, but morally and economically lost. As we have seen, ghost infrastructure projects reveal that the boundary between a functioning structure and a haunted ruin is often shaped by culture, history, and collective belief rather than engineering failure. From cursed resorts to abandoned tunnels, these sites remind us that land has memory and that progress can be halted by a single powerful omen. If you found this journey into unfinished monuments fascinating, make sure to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's forgotten mega projects. Thanks for watching.